Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Lakewood City Council in Lakewood, Colorado on May 8th, 2017, 7 p.m. in council chambers. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Paul.
Here.
Coop.
Here.
Wickman. Gutwein.
Here.
Franks.
Here.
Harrison.
Here.
Royball.
Here.
Vincent.
Here.
Abel.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Shakti.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Great. I'd like to welcome everybody here in chambers. Thanks for coming out tonight, braving the weather. Glad you're able to make it. And I'd like to ask if you do have a cell phone, if you could please put it on silent. And before we get started, just a quick update on the storm. It sounds like we have street maintenance crews out plowing, and then we'll continue into the night to unplug inlets that have been clogged throughout the city. Colorado Mills was closed earlier, and much like many of our residential areas, the city has taken some hits as well in the different buildings and things like that. So hopefully as we move forward and assess any kind of damage, if there's an opportunity for the community and the city to work together on some sort of emergency need basis or something along the lines of tree limbs, things like that, we'll definitely evaluate that. So if you wouldn't mind joining me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll remain standing for a moment of silent prayer. Thanks.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Item 4, proclamation, Mental Health Month.
All right. If I could please ask David Goff to come down. David's the VP of Administration and CFO for the Jefferson Center for Mental Health. And I'll ask Council President Roybal. Lead this.
Proclamation recognizing May 2017 is Mental Health Month. Whereas a good mental health is essential to all overall health and emotional well-being for all children, youth, adults, and families, and promotes a healthy community. And whereas one in 5 people in our community experience a mental health condition each year, and whereas increased focus on prevention of mental health conditions and here, help me out with this, would you? Substance use disorder among children and adolescents through screening and early intervention help improve lives. And whereas the stigma against mental health conditions prevents many people from accessing care, and whereas when mental health problems are detected early and treated, people can recover and maintain a healthy and independent life. And whereas the city of Lakewood is dedicated to improving the health and well-being of its citizens by ending stigma and focus on the role mental health of all of our lives. Now, therefore, on behalf of the City Council and the people of the City of Lakewood, I, Adam Paul, Mayor of the City of Lakewood, Colorado, by virtue of the authority vested in me, do hereby recognize May 2017 as Mental Health Month, given under my hand and seal of the City of Lakewood, this 8th day of May 2017, signed Adam Paul, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Goff, here you go. Thank you for coming out. And if you have a few words, please.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the board, staff, and clients of the Jefferson Center for Mental Health, thank you for issuing this proclamation recognizing the importance of mental health and substance abuse resources in our community. We truly value the support of the city of Lakewood, and without you, we really couldn't be doing this. So thank you again.
And as a follow-up to that, we just recently passed an emergency measure to help fund the substance abuse or the detox facility that you'll be taking over for Arapahoe House. And we appreciate you guys taking that on. It's an important function of our community. Yep. The clerk, please read the next item into the record.
Item 5, proclamation, Southern Gables HOA 50th anniversary.
All right, here's a fun one. Mayor Pro Tem
Okay.
Harrison, you're going to help because this is your hood.
I am so excited about reading this. And Mayor Paul, we have a council member who would also love to be down there standing with her group. So Dana Gutwein, also a proud member of the Southern Gables neighborhood. Here's what this proclamation says. Recognizing Southern Gables neighborhood for over 50 years of service. Whereas the first filing for building homes in Southern Gables was recorded April 8th, 1963, and whereas Southern Gables boundaries are South Wadsworth Boulevard to the east, Morrison Road to the south, West Jewell Avenue to the north, and South Garrison Street to the west, and include approximately 955 single-family homes, and whereas the Southern Gables Homeowners Association bylaws were written in March of 1973 and approved by the state of Colorado, and whereas Southern Gables takes pride in their neighborhood and continues neighborly traditions by hand-delivering association newsletters, developing and assisting community-based activities such as Leaf Collection Day, Ms. Gutwein, organizing monthly neighborhood luncheons and evening get-togethers, Mr. Trone, and providing neighborhood tote bags to the residents, Mr. Witten, and organizing neighborhood garage sales and celebrating National Night Out, just to name a few. And residents of the Southern Gables Neighborhood Association help make Lakewood a better place to live by volunteering for such activities as PTA, Scouts, Youth Sports, and Green Gables Elementary School. Now, therefore, on behalf of the City Council and the people of the City of Lakewood, I, Adam Paul, Mayor of the City of Lakewood, Colorado, by virtue of the authority vested in me, do hereby recognize Southern Gables Homeowners Association for over 50 years of service to the community.
All right. Well, that's a great proclamation, a great honor. Yeah. We really appreciate all you do, and you've really kind of stepped up your involvement through the Sustainable Neighborhoods program, and I know that folks throughout the whole community are just thrilled, and you become an example, and we have a party tomorrow night to celebrate. So, Mr. Wayne, if you'd like the mic.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're real happy and proud of Southern Gables. We have just a bunch of good people there. They love the neighborhood. And tomorrow night we're celebrating. We've invited over 120 people who have been in our neighborhood since 1965. And so we've gone out and personally hand-delivered invitations to all of them. And, of course, some of them aren't going to come because of other illnesses and things like that. So we're looking forward to a big event tomorrow night and getting a lot of support. And what's nice is the folks that's been around for 40 and 50 years is really excited about what they're going to be able to do and see tomorrow night. So if any of you have time, please drop by 6 to 8 at Green Gables Elementary. We appreciate seeing you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Will the clerk please read item 6?
Item 6, presentation, Advisory Commission for an Inclusive Communities Proposal, Bike Education.
All right. Ms. Mila Ferguson, good evening. Come on down. Welcome.
But I do have to take my glasses off so I can read. Okay, well, As the mayor said, my name is Mila Ferguson. I'm on the neighborhood committee for ACIC. And one of our assignments was to research and recommend community bike education providers with a special focus on child safety. And this assignment ties very nicely into the mayor's focus on Lakewood's children for 2017. So a bit of background, and then I'll go over the research we did. Lakewood proudly touts itself as a bicycle-friendly community. And if you talk to neighbors and friends, they will agree with that. We have a bicycle system master plan, which we're updating right now, but it's very good. We also are seeing an increase in the number of bikes on the road. We have a younger demographic now, and people are taking advantage of biking to work and to play. Now, our emphasis, as I said, was bicycle safety, especially for our children. One of the first things we did was look up through the city clerk's office what the Lakewood PD information was on bicycle accidents since 2013. There is a chart in Appendix A that shows you those number of accidents. Interestingly, they have gone down since 2013, but we are not addressing whether they're going up or down. That's just for information only. Another expert organization that we reached out to is the League of American Bicyclists. This is an organization that provides an assessment for communities based on criteria, and if you'll look at Appendix B, they produce a chart that their criteria is listed on, and they rate cities. Lakewood is currently rated as bronze, which is a pretty low rating. In Appendix C, shows the city's report card issued by the league, and it gives an idea of what we can do to increase our rating to silver, key steps to silver. So the committee focused on one of these key steps, which is bicycle safety education, such as safer routes to school and bike to school events. We also spoke with the LBAT, Lakewood Bicycle Advisory Team. This is a wonderful organization, works with the city. They are now helping us update the bicycle master plan. They actually are out on the bike routes finding connectivity gaps. And Gary Hardy is our contact for LBAT. He's been very instrumental in giving us information on our research. We also looked at 3 different cities in the Denver metro area. Denver, of course. Denver is rated silver status by this League of American Bicyclists. On their website, they talk about Smart Rider, rules of the road. They also have a Mayor's Vision Zero to reduce transportation-related injuries. Now, Fort Collins is platinum status. And that didn't surprise us because they're a bicycle city. They have a comprehensive bicycle plan, and they partner with bicycle ambassadors to promote safety. Colorado Springs is another silver status rating with the League of American Bicyclists. On their website, they have a pretty decent, comprehensive bicycle master plan, but they have an easy to read, colorful website showing bike safety for kids, cool bike stuff, with tips for safe riding, and their website is very easy to navigate. Now, we looked at several national and local organizations, and they're listed in the proposal, for bicycle education providers. But in the case of the national organizations, they're out of our geographic area, and that would not be convenient. The local organizations are, by definition, not educators. They give you information. except for one that we found, a local provider called Bicycle Colorado. This was the only local organization we found that actually provides bicycle safety education. Now, Bicycle Colorado has a passion for bicycle safety. They conduct education programs for schools, and many of our Jefferson County schools have taken advantage of their programs. They also assist communities in applying for safe routes to school grant money. And they are currently under contract with the city of Lakewood to help a program to reduce traffic by encouraging walking and biking. See Appendix D I'm reading. In Appendix D, you'll find much more information about Bicycle Colorado. Okay. Now, our primary recommendation is that we partner with Bicycle Colorado. Another one of our recommendations is that we develop, or the city develop, an internal resource or staff member. Two reasons for this. One, if the city decides to develop our own program for bicycle safety, so we would hire an educator and run the program ourselves. Or if we choose a third party like Bicycle Colorado, this staff person would still be the contact person, the liaison person, and it would provide continuity over the years for the program. We have some additional recommendations. We've listed several in our proposal, and I'll go over these four. You probably hear this a lot from all the proposals, but we recommend that the city enhance the website. It's difficult to find information on bicycle safety on the Lakewoods website, and we would hope that it would be something easy for parents and even children to get their information off of our website, something colorful like Colorado Springs. We also recommend that the city develop a partnership with Red Rocks Community College. They have a Center for Civic Engagement and Service Learning. So this is a program where a group of students in their semester find something in the community that they can do to help the community, to run a program. They get credit for it, they learn new skills, and the city or the community gets some free service for that semester. They came and talked to ACIC, and it was a wonderful program, and we're trying to find ways to get them involved. Another recommendation is to adopt the CDOT Share the Road Friend program. This is a public awareness campaign to encourage all road users of their responsibility to share the road. The last recommendation I wanted to highlight was we thought in cases of bicycle or bicycle motorist violations that the violator, instead of paying a fine, should be mandated to take a bicycle safety training course. And we think that might help reduce bicycle accidents and make it make the violators more educated instead of just having to pay a fine. I'm sorry, I didn't get that out very well. Now, this is our crew, the neighborhood committee members, Damon Drew, myself, Gino Furzy, Mary Hattelstadt, who is in the audience, Christine Wynn, Lynn Nowak, who is our leader. She couldn't be here tonight, and that's why I'm here. Dave Ryan, Lisa Watkins, and Nancy Weitzel. That's a conclusion of our proposal, and do you have any questions?
It looks
Thanks
like
for
we
your-
will. Very nice presentation. Thank you for the recommendations. Councilmember Franks.
First, could we bring back up the recommendations page? Just back up a couple. Thanks. I had a question on any of the agencies and nonprofits that you reached out to. Did any of them address the safety nuances, differences about electronic bicycles? Did any of them?
That did not come up.
I'm a recent owner one. I can tell you those things scoot. They do scoot, and so I'm now having to worry about my own safety out there. So I think that maybe as they become more popular, that we may want to kind of expand that a little bit. And then on the mandated safety training course, was that for what types of violation?
Well, I mean, we didn't go into specifics, but in our discussions, because we did reach out to the city PD to get those statistics, that there are bicycle accidents, bicycle motorist accidents. And because our emphasis was on education, maybe that would be a good tie-in to enforcement by, having to go to school instead of enforcement by a fine.
Okay, great, thank you.
And just to clarify, to follow up on that, I think the recommendation would be if council accepts this, we would send this to staff, and then they would start to go through this, and it would have to find our way through the courts to see if that's something that we could do, but that would be the process. Councilor Abel? It was locked.
I think you did a great job, the ACIC did, on looking at this. I especially I'd like to see some emphasis on the safe routes to school.
Yes.
But speaking of safe routes, we can give people all the safety training in the world, and if we keep them on streets with cars, especially in smallish bike lanes, that's going to be unsafe. When I was a kid, I had a bicycle safety course, and I got injured a couple of times, not severely enough to make my mother worry, because you just can't avoid the situation of an oncoming 2,000 or 3,000 pound car heading at a kid on a little bicycle. So I think as council, we certainly appreciate this. I'd like to see us incorporate everything you recommended. And I'd like to see more of an urgent look taken at how we can make our paths more safe for bicycles and frankly pedestrians and people with limited mobility.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of information from CDOT on that kind of thing, and we listed that in our research.
Thank you very much.
Councilor Coop?
Thank you, Ms. Ferguson. To you and your crew,
Yeah.
very, very nicely done. A very well put together report with just an incredible amount of information and research that you did.
Yeah.
I appreciate that very much. I have one question. Your second recommendation, internal resource / staff, is there a person on staff currently that is already involved in some way or has said that they want to be involved, or is this a recommendation to add a staff person?
We internally asked that question amongst ourselves. We don't know if there's anyone who would fit that criteria on staff now. We're not saying that you would add to staff, but what we're saying is that there should be somebody dedicated to doing that work instead of there should be somebody with a title, no matter who it is, that on a continuous basis has something to do or directs or is a liaison for bicycle education, especially for children, so that it's not left to an unknown staffer. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
It sounds like you're definitely looking for a central point of contact rather than it
Yes.
being delegated from maybe project to project.
And it would be a job that stays, even though maybe this person leaves, someone else has to fill that job. It would be a job description. Am I not explaining?
No, it's perfect. I'm just processing that, thinking as you're saying. I know I
Yeah,
understand.
because, we can make recommendations and you all can say, yeah, everybody thinks it's a great idea, but if there isn't a person who's going to take this information and continue it and run with it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And to add on to that, so some communities do have a dedicated bicycle planner, and part of the criteria for what you're talking about, the bronze level and kind of moving up the
Right.
spectrum is to have a dedicated person that works with planning as well as coordination and things along those lines. Councilmember Gutwein?
Thank you. I don't have a question. I just have some comments. What a great job on this presentation. I think this is such an important issue, and like you mentioned, it hits on the health of our community and health of our youth. It also addresses traffic and parking concerns by helping get cars off the road, which is something we hear about a lot in the chambers. So I think it's a great way to make it safer for people who want to get on a bike to do that, and then it allows the people that want to drive less traffic and less parking issues. And so I was curious to know if Fort Collins, I'm sure you didn't find this out, but I would just be interested to know if Fort Collins had parking issues around their schools, being a platinum bike safety.
Didn't get into that much detail on any of the cities, and that would be a question we wouldn't have probably asked on this, but I understand the.
Thank you.
And in comment, that Bicycle Colorado, I think, is already, like I said, helping the city with those kinds of problems. When I talked to the lady early on, she said, "What city are you from?" She said, "We just signed a contract with you." So it'd be a good fit.
Right. And I just also wanted to second what Councilman Abel said about, hoping that we can incorporate all of these recommendations and including safe routes to schools. So thank you so much for the hard work on this, and hope we get to move this forward quickly. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Harrison.
Yes, thank you to all the crew. You did a fantastic job of all the things that we wanted to see you research in this, and you did a great job. This is not necessarily to you, but to staff. When you start fleshing this out, one thing that we would really love to see is if we could have a pilot project with one of the PTA or the schools, and I'm looking at Southern Gables might be a wonderful place to try this since they're all here, to have a riding school bus. And I think that's one of the things that I think is really phenomenal about teaching kids bicycle safety. And the concept is that there's an adult who basically, as Pied Piper, goes around and gathers these kids up to ride their bike safely to school and then brings them back home kind of the same way. Phenomenal idea, does a whole bunch of things all at the same time. As parents, it gets our kids to school safely. It eliminates the need for a crosswalk guard for every single street crossing, and it teaches kids bicycle safety. So if we could look into that at the same time, I would be thrilled. Fantastic job. Thank you very much.
Councilor Coop.
I'd just like to follow up about the staff person or possible staff person. Probably don't have to say anything if council chooses to move this on to staff, which I hope we will. I would like to see a couple different scenarios that if there, what are budget implications if it does need a staff person, or if they feel there is somebody already on staff that would take that on. I'd like that included in some of their research. Thank you.
Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Miley, your presentation was very nice, and I appreciate the time that you've put into this. You're volunteers. I don't know if everybody understands that. I just had a thought. We are encouraging bicycles more and more on the streets. Has there ever been any consideration to license bicycles and at that same time have people take a bike safety program in conjunction with getting a license?
Again, we talked about that, but because it was out of the scope of our research, we didn't take it any further, so I don't know the answer.
It would be a proactive way of getting folks education prior to having them on the streets, is my
Seems
thought.
like when I was a kid, we had to have a license.
I know. I agree, it's
That was
fallen.
several years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah, no, it was, it was like stone, no wheels, right, yeah. Flintstone.
Councilor Gutwein.
Thank you. I just wanted to add another question for staff when they're looking into this is I'm interested to know if including our schools in the bike master plan, making sure that the routes to our schools are part of that plan so that it's safe, so that it's safe for them to get to school. Thanks.
Counselor Franks.
And this is just more of a comment. I wanted to understand if we are asking staff to do something, how we direct them to prioritize, knowing that we've been giving quite a long list of things. And so I just would be concerned about some of the things that we carried over from the past annual meeting and then this last one. So again, I think that while we want to take some of these forward, we may want to look at a prioritization meeting at some point.
Thank you. Counselor Shakti.
I just add that maybe that could be part of the feedback from staff is what seems more and less doable and why and what would be a priority. So, I mean, we can do that too, but I'm interested in their feedback. And thank you. It's great.
Okay, seeing no further questions, I guess the recommendation is to send this to staff, and we'll touch on a little bit of the work plan, but I think that certainly there's priorities that came out of the retreat, and staff's going to try to fold in, you know, we have the top 3 that we'll talk about a little bit later, and then staff's going to try to fold in the rest of them, and this would be potentially something that could fall in line there as well. And
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. I think we have an advantage as well, since we're redoing the bicycle master plan, that some of this information could be plugged in. Is that probably an opportunity? Cool. Thank you. And if you're on the ACIC, stand up. Who's here? All right. There we go. Thank you all very much. All right. Next up is public comment. This is the point in the meeting where the public is invited to address the City Council on items that did not appear on the agenda. All comments should be directed to the City Council. I'll ask that all in attendance observe the decorum of the City Council chambers and refrain from applause or audible support or discord with the speaker. There is a 3-minute limit per speaker. The indicator lights down here on this little magic box will go green. When you're 2.5 minutes in, it'll go yellow. When your time's up, it'll go red. And if you don't stop, I'll politely try to wrap you up. And first up on the list, we have Mr. Chisholm and then Mrs. Chisholm. Good evening.
City Council, Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, greetings. My name is Jay Chisholm. I am the property owner at 1595 Carr Street, Lakewood, Colorado. In March 2016, Ann Hine said, "Remove the wall of your addition. It is in the floodway." This is the ordinance and the regulatory map I was given by Marty Lloyd of her department. In October 2016, the ordinance says to scale the map. I hire a civil engineering firm to lay my small addition out on the map to scale. They determine my addition is not in the floodway. This means, according to the ordinance, that it can be built. This was their layout using the regulatory map that I was given. March 2017, my general contractor submits the plans to the city for a permit with a determination from my civil engineer. April 2017, the determination of my civil engineer is rejected out of hand. Ann Hine, remove the wall, it is in the floodway. April 2017, I get a letter from Ann Hine. With this letter is this map. On the map, she drew the line of the floodway, moving it up just enough to put part of my addition back in the floodway so that it could not be built. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chisholm. Mrs. Chisholm?
Good evening, City Council. I know that you're getting tired of our being here, but I have some information, and this is kind of cool stuff because Jay and I had a meeting with FEMA, and this is the kind of thing that y'all need to know, especially those of you who have floodway information. So what we found out is that this black line, the black line, is the floodplain lines, and those are scientific lines and were determined by an engineering company years ago. The floodway lines are the ones in yellow. So these boundaries here are the floodways. Those are the ones that are the concern. Those boundaries were superimposed by the city of Lakewood on this map. According to the FEMA, these floodway boundary lines are arbitrary. That was the word that was used. When I looked up arbitrary in the dictionary, it means they are dependent on individuals' discretion and not fixed by law. These lines are not based on computer imaging or even scientific fact. They are essentially one person's opinion of the width of the floodway at any given point. In short, Lakewood has all the power to change the floodway boundaries, which is exactly the opposite of what we were told on 3 separate occasions by members and officials of the Lakewood Building Department 1 year ago. Based on the information in the meeting that we had with FEMA and the fact that Ms. Hines stated in her letter to us, the one that Jay referenced, that our engineer did his work appropriately. That is what she said, which means he did nothing wrong. I feel saddened, but compelled to tell you that I believe Ms. Hine redrew the map to justify the no she had already determined she was going to give. Why else would she redraw the map when the easiest thing to have done, since she already had all the power, was to say yes?
Thank you. Mr. Baker? Good evening.
Evening. Mayor, councilors, my name is Robert Baker, B-A-K-E-R. I live at 50 South Cody Street, and I'm the president of Mid-Lakewood Civic Association. Our association covers the area that's adjacent to CCU and also all the neighborhoods to the north up to 6th Avenue from Carr over to Garrison, basically. And I am speaking on behalf of the Mid-Lakewood Board as well as some other folks that will be speaking tonight. My issue and our issue is that has to do with Lakewood zoning and CCU. Colorado Christian University has had a long history of abusing Lakewood zoning ordinances. And unfortunately, the city has gone along with them in many cases and ignored what the ordinance actually says to accommodate CCU. We had a very long fight with the city and with CCU 14 years ago, and we did prevail in getting 2 ordinances changed at the time to protect our neighborhood, our residential zoning. One of those was limiting the number of unrelated tenants, and the other prohibiting university and college use in residential zonings. So at that time, CCU was buying houses in our neighborhood to turn them into student living units. And so we had to go through those zoning changes to stop that incursion. And we felt we had pretty well accomplished that, and that has been the case for a number of years. Then we found out that
CCU is buying up a number of duplexes right adjacent to their property along Cedar and Cody Court on the west side. And after they had acquired all those houses, they came to us and to you and said, we want to redo the zoning on our whole campus, and we want to incorporate the stuff we just bought into the campus, and you guys approved it. We didn't fight it because it was right adjacent to their complex campus. And it made some sense, and that was all well and good for the time being. And we were assured by the school that this would solve their problems as far as being able to accommodate their needs as far as housing for students and building nice new buildings and so forth. However, what we've now come to find out is that they are now buying more properties outside of their zoning on the on the east side of Cody Court, and they are displacing perfectly good tenants who we'll be hearing from tonight. And they have stated their intention to turn these properties into student housing units exclusively. So here's the deal. The city zoning ordinance that has just been changed this past December, went into effect January 31st, has two parts to it that are important here. One is section 17.4.1, and that is a use table. And in that use table, university and college use is prohibited under R2, which is where these duplexes are, R2 zoning. The other important part is that there is a definition of universities and colleges. And under that definition, it lists all the things that a university typically does. And one of the things that they do is have student living units, So the college owns property outside of their zoning. They're going to rent exclusively to their own students, making them student living units. And in doing so, their intention will displace these folks that have been tenants of theirs. So I see I need to wrap up here. What we're asking for is the council and the planning department to simply read your ordinance. It's common language, plainly said, and enforce proper behaviors from CCU, which would not allow that use. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is it Lenore? Come on down. Good evening.
My name is Lenore Herskovitz, and I live at 140 South Cody Court. And I'd like to, before I begin, say a special thank you to Charlie Abel and Ramey Johnson for all the support and help they've given us through this. I originally lived on the west side of Cody Court. I reside there for 18 years. And when my home was sold, my landlady, to take care of me, would only sell if the university found me a place to live. They found me a place across the street. And at the time, I said, will I be allowed, am I going to have to move again? Because I would not have moved in there had I known that. They said, we have no plans for that. So good to go. I moved in across the street where I've lived for 4 years. Now we're in the present. And there, if you allow them to kick us out and put students in, there will be 2 houses on my street that are not occupied by students. We no longer have a neighborhood. Our neighborhood is gone, and I'm sure that wasn't the intent of whoever gave people permission to build in this area. We are now an extension of the CCU campus. And I would truly appreciate it if you would look at this issue and examine it. We're being thrown out so that they can house students. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry Dolan? Good evening. Welcome. Good.
Good. My name is Jerry Doolin. I live at 130 South Cody Court. I've lived there for 7 years. Last August, the university purchased the property from the people who owned it and rented to me, and then called me to tell me that I should mail my rent directly to them. And my very first question, of course, is how long can I stay? And they said to me, this was Mr. Dan Korn, who is the CFO at the university, I believe, said to me, we need to own all the properties on your side of the block before we can do anything with them, and that will take years. And I can quote him, years, because he said there are several people on the other side of the block who don't want to sell to us. So 5 months later, I get a call, and he says, we now own all the properties on your side of the block, so you have to go. I went to Jefferson County and pulled the records. They hadn't purchased anything else on my side of the block since last August, but evidently they changed their minds. I just wanted to say that I thought that we were probably the only people in the community that had dealt with this because we're right across the street, but that's not true. They bought single-family homes over on Cody Street and intended to put students in them 14, 15 years ago, and this whole issue started again. They can buy homes in your Gables community and put students in them if you don't support the zoning regulations. They can do it anywhere in the city if we don't say, no, you can't. And I believe it's your job to tell them, no, you can't. Thank you.
Thank you. Elise Hoover? Good evening. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Elise Hoover. I live at 150 South Cody Court, and while I have not been a community member of Lakewood for very long, I do love it there, and I'm committed to this community. I love this community. And I'm a teacher. Moving is expensive, you guys. But so I'm really nervous, and I just forgot my entire speech up there.
All right.
But,
good.
Let me regather myself.
Take your time.
Had I known that I was only going to live here for a year, I certainly would not have chosen to move there. And I think the city, or CCU, knew what they were doing all along, and a little communication would have been nice because it is extremely expensive to move, and I didn't do anything wrong. Like I said, I'm a teacher, and I feel like I'm being bullied. I'm the underdog who did nothing wrong, and I'm being kicked out, and I'm being punished for not doing anything. So I would really appreciate some support in this so I don't have to move. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for being a teacher. All right, that's it on the roster. Anybody else wish to speak who hasn't signed up? Yes, come on down. If you please give the clerk your name and address, that'd be great.
Hello, my name is Charmaine Britton, and I live at 3083 O'Hare Court. And I'm also part of the Coalition of Citizens for Healthier Lakewood. And I'm here to talk about tobacco sales to youth and implore the council to please move it up on the priority list. I know there's a lot of big things that Lakewood is facing right now, including all of the hail damage, which is why I was late, because I already had the roofers knocking at my door and had to convince them that no, I did not have damage. But that's another Oprah. Anyway, so I'm here to talk to you about that, and it's an easy win, I think, for the council. I think we would all agree that we want youth to have less access to tobacco. And what we're suggesting is that we do some licensing of entities that sell tobacco and make sure that they don't. I have a 17-year-old son who goes to high school. He's on the football team, and believe me, there's a lot of tobacco use with kids, both vaping and so forth. So something can be done. It's steps, and last year was the year of health. This year is the year of the child. This issue bridges those two things, so I would ask that you all maybe take some more time with it. I've got lots of facts here. I'm not going to repeat them all. I can provide those to you, but we'd be happy to talk more.
Great.
So that's it for me tonight.
Thank you. And we're going to bring that up at general business. Yes, ma'am. Come on. Come on up. If you could just give us your name and address, that'd be great.
My name is Jerry, and I live at 45 South Cody Street. I live directly behind CCU also. As Robert Baker had said earlier, 14 years ago, we fought a fight when a friend of the university bought up 8 single-family homes in our R1 zoned district. We came to the city. I was very naive at the time. I thought we just tell the city that they are using these as dormitories, which at the time it said there were no dormitories allowed in single-family homes. Pointed that out to, I think it was a Mr. Gray at the time, and the city couldn't help us. They didn't think they were dorms, da-da-da-da-da. They were dorms. Long story short, they were dorms. That all came out. We talked to the university wouldn't cooperate. A year and a half later of our precious time, I'm a nurse, I work full-time, at the time I did, and everybody there has a job, but we have to do this, because zoning is not being enforced. We get through all of that. We make friends with the university. The city takes care of us, and we get a couple of laws changed so our zoning is protected, and time passes. The next thing is Bill Armstrong calls us up, the late Bill Armstrong, who was then the president of CCU, and he said, we are looking to expand our campus, and we want to be good neighbors with you. We know we've had problems with you in the past. He had looked at the history, he had done his homework, and we said, we're ready to be good neighbors too. They had looked at several other campuses, one over in Rooney Valley, one over in Highlands Ranch. They were rejected from these places, or if not rejected, somehow it didn't work out for them. They finally decided they wanted to make home here in Lakewood. They wanted to make the campus work. Mr. Armstrong told us they needed to work on the zoning. And the city strategic planning committee was helping them work out the zoning. So they changed some zoning around there, encompassing some of the duplexes, which Robert Baker referred to, and the zoning district became a mixed-use residential urban use, MRU zoning, and that's the universities. They have some duplexes that they took and bought up that entire block. Maybe they started the process before they asked permission, but we said, it makes sense to us, and this will help. He wanted to be considerate of light and noise pollution that was coming over from them. Just wanted to be good neighbors. We agreed. We saw their plan. They're building some beautiful buildings over there, and we love that campus. It looks very, very nice. Now what they have done is they've crossed boundary. They've come over the street. Now they have gone into the R2 zoned area, and they're kicking out the tenants that are there, which I guess a landlord thinks they can do that, right? But they are the university. And it says in the R2 zoning that it is not for university, use. And in the university use, it says one of the uses includes student living units. There's plenty of people that they have told these are going to be student living units. They were going to put students in there. So there's no denying it. That's what they're going to do. Some of these ladies over here came to the city zoning and said they're kicking us out to now use this for something that it's not zoned for. And zoning says, oh no, it's okay, they can do that. A landlord can do anything they want. But a landlord doesn't determine zoning. If Kroger came in and bought a couple of the single-family houses and said we're going to open little mini grocery stores, that wouldn't be okay. And if a university comes and buys some homes over in the R2 district and say, we're going to use these as little mini student living units, that is not okay. It's not about a landlord issue. It's about a zoning issue. So what we want is for the city to do their job and enforce the zoning law that exists already. And it would be nice that it be done immediately so that these landlords can stay put. And for me, I'm not being kicked out.
Thank you very much.
But for them, they need to be. I don't know where it goes from here because we can't ask questions here, but it needs to be resolved.
Will you let the clerk know your last name on your way back? Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? All right, seeing none, I will close public comment. The Chisholms are gone. And I would just, couple things, so our city attorney is aware of what's going on. And I'll be reaching out to Dr. Sweeting and CCU and try to see what their take is, what's going on, see if we can bring the parties together for some conversation to start this process. Councilor Abel?
Looks like Mr. Cox is chomping at the bit to say something.
No, I was just on standby. But yeah, we've been talking about it. We were looking at the issues, and it's
Sure.
there are a little more complexities.
I got an opinion from the attorney earlier that said that Mr. Cox could rent these, could buy these homes, and he could rent them out to only students, and it would be legal. And he said a corporation could do the same thing. And he said CCU can do the same thing. I'm sorry? There was no attorney-client disclaimer on the on the email he sent me. It was rather informal. Am I correct?
It did not have a disclaimer on it. That is not determinative as to privilege. If it's a matter of legal opinion that it's sharing with the client, the elected officials, it is to be treated privileged. But you're right, it did not have that disclaimer on it.
Thank you.
Responding to an email that you had sent. So.
Okay. However, the point missed there is that CCU is not allowed by our zoning to have a university use off campus. Now, it all hangs on what we call student housing. In July of 2009, we defined student housing as a dwelling, not a dwelling on campus, but a dwelling unit owned or controlled by a college and inhabited by students who are related or unrelated. That's pretty clear, except that in 2012, in a reiteration of our zoning ordinance, that was omitted. That definition was removed. I don't believe there was a red line version presented to council so that they would have known that was being removed. It was certainly not pointed out specifically by anyone who compiled that amendment that definition was being removed. So it would have amounted to, if council wanted to know that this was being removed from the amendment they were about to pass, they would have had to have both 200-page documents in front of them and read it line by line comparatively till they got down to definitions at the end where in one, the definition of student living unit was defined, and in the other it wasn't. So it was, in effect, it was that definition was overruled by omission. And I think we need to go back and look at why that was and perhaps restore it if there was no notification to the public or to council specifically that this was being removed from the code. Those words have the same meaning today as they did in July of '09. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, I think that there's a lot of different areas, and unfortunately, maybe we'll see an opportunity here, but we need to start the conversation with Dr. Sweeting and CCU, and we will do that immediately. And when you deal with these situations, everybody has a legal opinion, right? And a lot of times we get stuck in the gray, and that's where a conversation with CCU, I think, will be beneficial, at least to get us in a position to where we understand where they're coming from, where you're coming from, and where the city's coming from. So we'll get that going. Thank you. Councilor Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. I very much appreciate your comment that you will reach out to the university very quickly. It is a matter of urgency, and it sounds like you understand that. In conversation that Charlie and I had with the university, not with Dr. Sweeting, it was very clear that the duplexes were going to be used for student housing. So it's out there. I've heard it myself, and we just need to reach out to them ASAP.
Yep, we will do that. Okay. Next up, we have the consent agenda. The use of the consent agenda has been made to expedite council action. It contains both resolutions. It does not contain either tonight. It just contains item 8, which is the approval of city council minutes. So will the clerk please read the consent agenda or item 8 into the record?
That's fine. The consent agenda consists of item 8, approving minutes of city council meetings of January 23rd, 2017 and April 10th of 2017.
All right. Any public comment on those two topics? Seeing none, I'll close public comment and ask for a motion.
Mayor Paul, I move for the approval of council minutes which are included in the consent agenda items introduced into record by the city clerk.
Second.
All right. Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, please cast your votes. That passes 11 ayes, 0 nays. All right. So next up, we have general business. We have a few different topics that, 3 agenda items that were brought up by council members, as well as I would like to get consensus from the group to send the youth tobacco licensing issue to our advisory commission for an inclusive community to begin to take a look at that. So if there's consensus for that, that's what we will do, and there's consensus for that. Mayor Pro Tem Harrison.
I was just hoping that when it gets to ACIC, if they would get back to us with a time frame, that would be appreciated. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Shakti.
I would like to have council look at it and not send it to ACIC.
Okay. Councilor Gutwein.
I also would like to have council look at it and not send it to ACIC. I think that there's a lot of work that has already been done by this group and research presenting various options that other cities have already adopted, different licensing measures. So I'm not sure that it needs to be researched by the ACIC because most of that research has already been done. So I would prefer to see a study session by council and hear the research that has been already completed. And then if we need to, from there, we could move it to ACIC if we had to, but I think the research is already there.
Okay, thank you very much. And I guess we have some folks that would like to see it go to ACIC and 2 folks that would like to see it go to a study session. Again, I think with a lot of the different things involved, it's 2 issues. One is youth tobacco usage that comes along with certain laws that other communities have enacted. And then the other part of that is a licensing, and I think to have the folks on our commission look at it would be a good route, but I'll leave that to the council. Councilor Wickman?
Well, I just kind of wonder where we're going with that. I'm interested in doing it. When you first said, let's take it to ACIC, I'm fine with that. Dana and Shakti have an even better idea. I'm in favor of that. So it's not 2, it's 3. Are we going to be making some sort of motion here? Where are we at here?
Well, I mean, we can make a motion. Here's the deal. We have a workload that is huge right now. And we can barely find time to do certain study sessions for things that we started last year. So this might be a faster route, a more efficient route to have the ACIC weigh in, but it's council's pleasure. So, Councilor Vincent?
I think you answered my question. My concern is everything that's on a study session now, I'm afraid that the tobacco issue will get pushed out further than, quite frankly, if ACIC looks at it and comes back with a recommendation. Because I think our study sessions we're still trying to find a study session for the housing study, aren't we? And you can't get that done. And those are things from last year. So that would be my proposal, is take it to the ACIC. I think they could get it done fairly quickly. Of course, all of them left. So that 2, sorry. That might be more effective and efficient.
And before I go to the Councilor Coop, Councilor Wickman, we could do a motion. We're in a regular meeting. But Councilor Coop?
I certainly don't want to speak for the ACIC, but I don't think if it goes to them that they have to reinvent the wheel, that they have the information from this group and to work from that and not to go out and start the whole process over again. So I think that this gives them a great head start, and the idea that they could come to us probably sooner than a study session. So I would support, even though I appreciate the study session idea, I think going the route to ACIC is, I would vote for that one.
Councilor Franks.
I'm actually in favor of going to the ACIC, but I would like us to get maybe a little bit more fine-tuned on the scope that we provide. I think like with the bicycle presentation, there was key things that I think we have to do a little bit better job on our scope statement, that what we're interested in learning about maybe from other cities, what the costs are, what underlying laws are, have there been any challenges to those types of things. I just think we want to kind of give them a broader scope statement. It probably will also be more interesting for them to kind of dig in and really come back with more meat than less. And so I'd be fine for the ACIC. But again, I think our scope has to be that we have to look at alternatives, consequences, and kind of dig a little bit deeper on our research.
Thank you. Councilor Abel.
About 50 years ago, I started smoking. And at the time, about all it was said to do to you was stunt your growth, or perhaps make you sterile. It was much worse than that. The issue has to be addressed. The sooner the better. I think ACIC can examine it with the work that's already been put into it by these health groups in a timely manner. But if we want to go ahead and run it through council, that would be fine as well.
Sir. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I support your proposal of going to ACIC. I think that's the appropriate route. And Councilor Harrison, they can compile all the information for us. It's good that it's already done, but they'll put it in one place. That makes sense to me. Yeah.
Councilor Gutwein.
My only concern with going through ACIC is that then once the proposal is finished by ACIC, then it will still come back to us and then get put back in the queue, rather than just hearing the information and going forward, even though we do have a large workload. So I would still like to support just hearing this directly to council.
And to Councilwoman Franks's comment, the more narrow we define it, probably, and the scope of that, to say we want a definite recommendation, should the council do this or not, I think that alleviates what you're mentioning. Councilor Coop.
Councilor Gutwein's comments brings up a question with me. We can just accept ACIC's recommendations, can we not? It doesn't, where it's not required to go back to staff.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you. That clears up that.
All right. So what do you want to do?
Did you add all of that up?
I still think that seems like the majority would like to go with sending it to the ACIC. What we could do, Councilor Franks, to your point, is we have some emails, some background information that really has more of the scope of what the ask is, and we could have that sent to them, if that's okay. I have a couple more lights. Councilor Coop.
I would like to make a motion to send this topic to the ACIC with a more defined scope of the subject.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion. Second. It looks like Councilor Harrison, you have a comment.
All I was going to ask is, in this defining of scope, do you want them to also look at the actual ordinances as issued in other cities, or do you want to leave that language up to our attorney to create?
Mr. Cox?
Well, I attended a meeting several months ago with Ms. Britton and others representing the group, and there were several departments from the city represented. So we have seen the material preliminarily, and I think that's still a good option for the ACIC as a city entity to take a look at what's there and make sure there aren't questions that haven't been answered or conflicts in the information or anything like that. So I think you could do it on an expedited review, but I think the ACIC should see the language that's been used elsewhere, and then we can tailor it as needed to fit Lakewood.
That kind of adds one more step, because I don't believe ACIC any other previous projects have been asked to look at ordinance language from other cities. You think they have?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, a lot of different ones.
Okay, I guess I was sleeping at the switch, so
And it
thank
already
you.
exists, and you know, we've seen it, so for them to look at it, then we can fine tune it if need be.
So there's a motion and a second, and that is to send this recommendation, and we can get the language that we've received, and it sounds like, Tim, you could assist in getting that narrowed down to the ACIC with a somewhat of an urgent turnaround to address. Fair enough? Any discussion, comments? Please cast your votes. And that passes 10 aye, 1 nay, the nay being Counselor Gutwein. All right.
Thank
you. Thank you, everybody.
Counselor Johnson, would you like to start with grocery carts, please?
Thank you. This has been long in the coming, and I am so appreciative to see that we are finally, hopefully, going to address this. And that's the grocery cart issues on our streets. Thanks to the mayor, we've been working on this and trying to find language that other states actually have come up with. And that's also thanks to the mayor. This is not only our community that's been struggling with this. This is a nationwide problem. We've had a sit-down meeting with businesses. I've also personally gone to 4 or 5 of the businesses and talked with the GMs. It's a struggle for them as well. The intent to try and put together an ordinance is not to add a burden to our businesses and not to be punitive. At this point, I think that they see it basically as a cost of doing business. It's become rampant for them. The carts are on our streets. They're on their ditches. They're in dumpsters. They're in private and public right-of-ways. Looking at the language of the ordinance in California, they describe this as a public nuisance. It does decrease property values. It does lead to blight. And I think as much as anything else, it's an image of our city. We are an all-American city, and this does not lean to that type of an image. It's a poor image of who we are. I'd like to see us have, I guess, a study session on this, or I'm not sure how you want to take this forward.
So if I might, we've had done the study sessions, we had some research. What we had intended was to create an ordinance that puts not a burden on the city, but puts it on the actual owners, so there'd be some notification, there'd be some buy-in, and it would enhance the responsibility of the actual folks who have shopping carts at some threshold to comply and to be the ones who are going out and picking up. Because we looked at different areas to where you could make the city be the function of that, but that's adding more work to the city. So putting that burden back on the store with some penalties, and eventually we might pick them up and there could be some cost to that. But I think that's more of the direction, would be working with staff to come up with some draft language of an ordinance.
Thank you, and we've got the draft
We've got-
from
yeah, we've got-
California that you
that one-
said it very nicely. Thank you.
Okay, absolutely. So there you go. That's the that's the proposal, Any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, I imagine that, and then that's an okay to send that forward.
Yes, please.
Okay, we didn't have to take a vote. Dave, you could say no. Or Dana. Yeah. Dana, does that no button really work? I guess it does. Harley's yes button doesn't work. No, we don't need a vote. There's no opposition. There's no need to vote. All right, Dana, we're going to go back to you, and I'm going to exercise my no. Just kidding. Go ahead. Your proposal.
On the bikes? Yeah. So, so basically, I wanted to see if we could have a bike day as part of our being committed to being a bicycle-friendly community. And so where this idea originated is I used to live outside Philadelphia, and every Sunday during the summer, they'd close one of the major streets down to cars, and families and kids and, well, all ages could enjoy biking safely. And I think it's a really exciting and healthy thing to do without having infrastructure costs, and promotes just a healthy and safe activity for the families and everyone who lives here. So that's what I would like to see ACIC research and see if that would be a good fit for our community.
And to add on to that, some of the bigger cities, one that jumps out is Bogota. They actually have a big event where they've closed a highway, which I don't think you want to close a highway, but maybe that's what the ACIC wants to do if it goes forward. Councilor Franks?
So I wanted to ask a couple clarifying questions. So would we be then looking for them to not only research was it a good fit, but also to propose locations, propose times, to see if we would kind of partner it with maybe other festivals or other things? I guess I'm trying to understand maybe the financial impact, the impact maybe to motorists and that. So would that all be part of the scope that you would be proposing for ACIC?
Yes, thank you. I think that the ACIC should look into what they think would be good times, but I think that when it comes to the finances, we as a city might have to also look at what we're willing to take on and what we're willing to do. So yes, I think it would be great to get recommendations on that from the ACIC, and then some of the financial implications will probably have to come from staff.
Councilor Abel?
I think a lot of folks could live with an alternate route on Sundays. My concern is first responders. If we fill up Wadsworth or Kipling or Sheridan or Alameda with a lot of folks on bikes and there's an emergency, what do we do? And I would like ACIC to look into that. If they can find an adequate solution that will fly with our first responders, I think that would be that would answer my concern, but I do think that we need to talk with them directly.
Councilor Johnson?
Thank you. Councilwoman Gutwein, I really appreciate your passion on this, and I understand where you're coming from. I had personal experience with this last autumn in Paris. They actually have a program like this. It is extremely discouraging to buy airline tickets and cruise tickets to get to the hotel and not have any way that you can get to the boat. What I'm telling you is that it also affects commerce and industry, it affects tourism and first responders. It was not well received there in Paris, but people are living with it. I think we need to proceed very carefully on the way that we go forward with closing any streets and doing this on a regular basis. It was bad enough that they did it once a month there, and they were struggling with just even having it that often. So.
Thank you. And if I might just add, potentially this could draw the business community in, and it could be an effort that would, enhance all of that. And we do have some roads. I can think of the frontage road on Alameda that's secondary to actual Alameda. So there's a potential that we could figure some of that out. Councilor Gouline, did you have a follow-up? Okay.
So I just wanted to address, I think the location is going to be a really critical piece of this for the reasons that you're describing. And when I was putting together this idea, I actually looked at the Paris example as well. And that really was, like Mayor Paul's saying, to also enhance the commerce by foot traffic and bikeability have been shown to increase in some cases, especially on Main Street type places. So some places do it along businesses to bring business to those areas. Some places do it away from businesses so that they're not impacted. I think that that would be a question for the ACIC to see what we want to get out of this. And I think that we could certainly start with one day of the summer. We see Colfax get closed for the Colfax Marathon, which has been a really great thing for the region and a source of community pride. So we could have this be a high impact project or a much lower impact project, and I think that ACIC will be able to give us an idea of what would fit in our community. So I'd like to leave it somewhat open-ended so that they can evaluate those kinds of questions, but absolutely we'll need information from first responders and businesses and everyone. Thanks.
Councilor Roybal, or Council President, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick clarification. When you're talking about bicycles, are you also including like tricycles for the kids? Are you including mopeds, little mini bikes, motorcycles? Yeah, I mean,
That's a good question.
What are you wanting to get out of it? That's the key question.
I guess I was, when I used to do this, it was pre-electric bike. Tricycle, so I think for me this is an idea of a way to promote using your bike as transportation and having it be a healthy activity. But again, I think that now there are electric bikes. I think that should be considered. Tricycles, yes. We even rollerbladed, so might want to throw that in there too. And the other thing that there was food trucks and that kind of thing. So it really became a very fun source of pride for the community.
One of my thoughts came up real quick is, what about the Lakewood trails, that are open space? You can probably, that would take a minimum impact in the community, but yet accomplish your tasks. So the question would be, is what are you trying to get out of it? And that's where I was trying to headed toward to see what you wanted to see and your vision was. So something to think about.
Thank you. Yeah, I think vision is being able to ride safely on the street at least one day out of the year without cars. Thanks.
Councilor Shakti.
I just want to appreciate that even though it's been done before, it's sort of bringing a visionary idea to Lakewood. And part of that is it's not obvious how to do it when you just say a visionary idea. And so there are things that need to be worked through, but it's a cool thing to think about. And in terms of what is the point of it, I think some of it is it's fun because it's novel. It's fun to be safe on the road, but it also creates the feeling of an event and a festivity because you don't always get to go right down the road. So I think it's a good thing to look into.
Councilor Abel.
A couple of things. It sounds like it'd be a party on wheels, and that's great with me. Also, at our Earth Day, a couple and their son showed up in a pony cart. Can we add pony carts to this parade?
By all means.
I'm for it.
All right, so we have that recommendation, and you have a pretty detailed synopsis here to send that to the ACIC. Is there any opposition? All right, so that will go to the ACIC. Counselor Johnson, you're up on the last one.
Thank you. I'd like to have council look at our ordinance regarding how many sex offenders in a single residence. I know that this is not something that any of us get lobbied about, but we did have a speaker from the State Board of Sexual Offenders, and our ordinance allows only 1 per resident. Best practices is 3 per resident, because they police one another. So it's not going to be something that you're going to hear a lot about, but it's really something that we need to take a look at as a city and update that ordinance and have it in best practices. I can see all the sex offenders.
Counselor Vincent.
I was part of a neighborhood action when, or not an action, but in the middle of something where they said that they wanted 2 or more sex offenders in a home. It energized the community. They did not want that. It caused a lot of grief. There was something that said that that was incorporated into sex offender language a long time ago. But when it started spreading and when the group homes for sexual offenders became in different wards and more widespread, then it went from what followed group homes down to the 1 per resident. So that is something that was passed a while ago with input from the community. And then I started thinking, I don't know, I'm more than willing to probably bring this up next year when we have our retreat. Right now, I think there's a lot of stuff out there. And also, I have to, I guess if I'm going to serve the community, I have to look at my emails, how I'm treated, how come we stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning. And it's because people they want to keep things as they are. They don't want their neighborhood to change. We've heard about zoning today. We've heard about Rooney Valley. We've heard about group homes, disabled. And so I don't know that I want to bring this forth to the community when I just don't think it'll be well received, and I don't know that there'll be a lot of parameters on it.
Councilor Johnson, did you have a follow-up or another comment on that? Your light's on.
Yeah, I would just like to say I'd at least like to have us hear from experts on the topic. Treatment has changed, philosophies have changed, and I totally get where you're coming from. Our boxes are going to light up. But I'd like to know the safety of the community right now versus what the safety would be if we are doing best practices, and at least have the opportunity to hear from experts in the field before we actually would go one way or another. We don't have to go that way, but at least let's know about it from people that treat the folks.
Mayor Pro Tem Harrison.
Thank you very much for your comments, Councilor Johnson, but I can't go here. With all the comments that we've had on group homes with various different things, I can't imagine if I presented this to Ward 5, not only would I be tarred and feathered, but probably lynched quickly as well. I can't in good conscience even go there. Be happy to look at the information privately, but I want to go on record and saying, not in my time on council. I just couldn't support it. Thank you.
Councilor Abel.
I keep forgetting that button. A lot of disciplines are very empirical and have a regime for coming to conclusions. Sociology is not one of them. It often is the theory of the year, the theory of the day. I've seen various theories of juvenile justice come into fashion and go out of fashion. When I was walking and knocking on doors a year and a half ago, I was surprised at the number of people that would point at the house across the street or down by the church and say, there are 7 sex offenders living there. None of them bought into the idea that the more the merrier. So while I would like to hear from the experts, I also am very dubious that we have the final answer on the treatment. And until, as long as there is that kind of speculation out there, I prefer smaller populations to larger ones. And I don't believe, Mr. Cox, that this is a protected group under the Fair Housing Act on which our group home law is loosely based.
You're correct.
Thank you.
Councilor Shakti.
I just want to add, if we had infinite time, I would be interested in hearing this information. But given that I and many other counselors are dubious about what will come out of it, and we don't have time to address the smoking ordinance quickly, which needs to be done in a bunch of other things, I would say it's not on the list of top priorities for right now.
Councilor Johnson, you want to follow up?
I have to appreciate all your comments, and I defer to your wisdom on this. We did have a gentleman come to our ward meeting and provide what was best practices. It was based on that, but I defer to your wisdom, and I'm happy to withdraw this. Yeah.
Councilor Gutwein.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate continuously looking at how we can make our community safer and exploring different options. I am also a little concerned about making this kind of change. We have 2 new group homes in Ward 5, and I can imagine that that new level of the conversation would be a challenge. So I agree. I think I appreciate the intent, and I'm not sure that I'd like to see us move forward with this right now.
Okay, Councilor Franks.
I just think the only comment I'd like to make is maybe it's appropriate to understand what the scope of the problem is from our police force. If we have a lot of recidivism, you know, if there's, maybe we start there. Maybe we just get some stats and we start there. Again, I think going down any road and changing that, especially increasing the numbers, will certainly raise folks up and have them come before us. But I think we first need to understand what the problem looks like. And I'd like to just maybe, I can put in a request just to see if we can get some crime stats on that or some recidivism, and really just make that a starting point, because I don't want to walk away from a difficult discussion if we have a risk out there that is maybe uncomfortable to address. My job here is to do the work of the people, and so I first want to find out, are we leaving our citizens in an unsafe position? And if we are, then I think we have a moral duty to act upon that. So I think my first step will be to find out whether or not we do actually have a problem with our current situation.
Mr. Cox, did you want to?
Just to follow up on Councilor Frank's comments and all of the comments, actually, this is the sort of topic that the police department gets briefed on. They get materials, educational materials. We have a police legal advisor who keeps up to speed on new developments in the law. So they're certainly aware that this is an alternative theory, and we can determine what level of research they've already done and see if they can put some more information together for you.
And I think
I accept that.
Okay. All right, so then we don't need to go further with that at this point. Thank you for bringing that forward. Okay, so last under general business, council priorities for 2017. What month is it? It's May, I guess. It's May. So the top 3 that we will begin to address, and there were basically 13 that came out of our retreat. Is that correct? Yeah, there were 13 that came out of the retreat, and the top 3 weighted density-associated challenges, transportation, traffic, infrastructure upgrades and improvements, sidewalks, last-mile connections, and infrastructure upgrades and improvements in roads. So those are the top three that came out of our planning retreat. That is where staff will begin to work, and I think as they get into these, there are some ones that might lap a little bit or overlap to try to push in there where you can find that opportunity. Councilor Abel?
If I remember right, all three of those priorities were put on the board under one subject, and then the three things under it, and all three of them got 10, we were supposed to put stickers on our top priorities. That one item with those three things contained was the top priority with 10 votes apiece. So I don't see why we're separating them into 1, 2, 3 when they're all tied for 1. So the next item would be in 4th place.
Well, right. And I understand that. I think it was broken down. The idea was it'd be broken down because they're pretty big, distinct.
I think they were all presented as an idea that we address all of these infrastructure needs that we've not addressed in the last 20 years. And on the survey that I hope soon will be posted on our webpage, there is a bullet item that says financial mechanism, Tabor. And the financial mechanism that was suggested with those 3 items that rated tops was a revenue bond issue. I know that because I'm the one that brought it up. So I think we need to look a little further at how, because those priorities fit together like a puzzle. And the funding mechanism for the funding need far exceeds any of our Tabor overages. So addressing them through Tabor refunds would take something in the neighborhood of 30 years in my calculation, and we need to address them sooner than that. So
thank you.
Just wanted to clarify.
Appreciate that. Councilor Shakti?
I think it's great that we're coming together to prioritize as a council. All I would add is, I think that how long things would take, how hard they are to do, wasn't really part of the sticker project. And so if there are things that are way easier that could be done with way less effort, I think that that's relevant even if they're lower down on the list.
Yes, I'm not dictating this. I'm reading what council decided that they wanted and ranked them. So these are the top issues that council decided, and you're right, some of them overlap, and I think where there's those similarities, that's where staff can try to peel off some of these. But to Councilor Abel's point, you're right. These all have a dollar tag associated with them. So that's going to be a part of every discussion is how do you want to pay for it? Do you want to utilize more money in the budget? Do you want to do revenue? Do you want to do, Tabor, that word? So, there's a lot of different things, but I think to get staff moving forward right now, to have this and to move this forward to staff is what I'm trying to make sure that that's what this group wants to do. Sir.
As for how long it takes us, we're 20 years behind. If we continue to grow at the pace we're growing and we don't address this now, we'll just fall farther behind. So yes, time is of the essence. I agree that we can prioritize them, that we can take care of them, and we could discuss them in a certain order. But in order to finance them, we have to lump it all together and present it in one big package tied up with a nifty bow on it. We can't piecemeal sidewalks and open space and traffic and storm water drainage separately. If we don't start addressing them now, we'll be just like future councils and never get around to, or like past councils, we'll never get around to addressing the mitigation for the growth we have already undertaken.
Well, and part of that discussion lies in looking at what we already have planned out, like the capital improvement fund, what those projects are, and coming back to council and saying, this is the projection for 5 years. Do you want to change that projection and move that money to different projects? And I think that's part of this due diligence, is to say, we've outlined this area for sidewalks. Well, council, that may not be your priority anymore based on changes in the different areas of the city. Should we reallocate that money? Go ahead.
My point is, we don't have that luxury. We're way behind on sidewalks. We're way behind on traffic improvements. You're talking about stormwater drainage. We have 2 projects earmarked for $60 million, and they're sorely needed. That's half of it. At prices calculated 3 years ago, we were 20 years and $120 million behind on stormwater drainage programs. And that's just not floodplain. That's people's basements and people's living rooms. So I don't think we can afford to languish. I don't think we can afford to piecemeal it and say, oh, well, we'll pull 10 million out here for sidewalks this year, and maybe next year we'll pull out another 15 million for a stormwater project over here or over there. I think we need to look at it all and figure out how we're going to pay for what we haven't done.
Yeah, I'm well aware of our capital needs. Absolutely. Thank you. Councilor Franks?
I just wanted to say, I think it's important to, obviously we have a gap analysis. We have to figure out where we want to put things. But I do think that there's some things wrapped up in there. I mean, the number one issue that is brought to me is density, overcrowding, the mixed use zones and that. So there's some things that aren't going to have a financial component of them. They're going back, and what concerned me was that reference earlier about the lack of the redlining in the document. And so I'm going to put in a request tomorrow to get those 2 documents so I can run a diff statement on those to figure out every word that was dropped out. So I'll put in that request tomorrow. So I think there's some things we can do with the zoning that was changed and maybe had some unintended consequences, then look to see what language maybe we haven't discovered we've overlooked, that got overlooked. That was before I got on council, and go back and look at all of those mitigations that we can do that don't cost money, while we're also then figuring out where the things that do cost money. But I think there's a lot of things that we can do both on the zoning document and with developer fees, eliminating the fee in lieu of land, and there's a lot of different things that we can do that don't actually put costs on the citizens yet until we figure out the larger plan.
Councilor Wickman?
I just want to ditto that. No, I'll say a little bit more. I mean, that was a little too brief, but I really don't need to talk a lot. No, I agree. Let's look at some legislative regulations first before we start talking about raising money. So what she said.
All right. Well, thank you for all the lively discussion. So, Mayor and Council reports, I have nothing. Council President Roybal?
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to remind people, a very important message that I want to put out. We had a hailstorm this afternoon, and I wanted to remind people that we're going to have a lot of contractors coming from out of state and saying, we're the best roofer. Sign here. Give me money. I just want to remind people to take a deep breath, contact their insurance company, let them help you. And one quick reminder is that they have to be licensed in the city of Lakewood. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Well said. That's well said. We should probably get that information out too, because this is the time then when we see the scams come through the neighborhood and people get taken advantage of. Mayor Pro Tem Harrison.
And to add to that, most of your homeowners policies will allow up to 1 year before the work has to be done. So don't feel like you have to do it next week or tomorrow. Give yourself some time to figure out what is, may have to file the claim sooner than that, but you usually have a year to have the work done, so keep that in mind. Next thing, I wanted to comment for Lynn Coppage came and did a presentation at Ward 5 on sustainability, and the other counselors, if you can invite Lynn to come and speak. She did a phenomenal job. She even has most of Ward 5 convinced that they can compost and be more sustainable. So she did a fantastic job, and I just want to say thank you to Lynn. Thank you.
Councilor Coop. I'll go to my left.
I'm
Councilor
looking for
Shakti.
information right now. Thank you.
No report.
Councilor Johnson.
I would like to thank all the folks that came to our Ward 1 meeting this last Saturday. We had lively discussion, and I appreciate that people took the time to come on a Saturday morning. Also, we had a Sergeant Creighton Bates who came and spoke to us about automobile trespass, gave wonderful information, and I'd like to thank him for coming on a Saturday. It was very well received. Thank you. Thank you, Sergeant Bates.
Councilor Abel.
Ramey just stole my thunder, and she did it on purpose. But yes, I would like to second that. Thank you, Sergeant Bates. And everyone that came Saturday, we had a very robust discussion among some parents from Lakewood High School and some of the neighbors. They have opposite points of view, and everyone was cordial. It was as Ramey would put it, a robust conversation. I prefer rowdy, but it was nice to see all those folks come together with different viewpoints and yet respect each other a great deal. So,
Councilor Vincent.
Ward 2 City Council meeting, 7:30 a.m. this Wednesday at 1580 Teller.
Councilor Franks.
I did want to remind folks that we do have a no soliciting ordinance where you can put up you have your no soliciting sign. And we also have a program through the police department where you can print out a little brochure and hand it to anybody who comes to the door soliciting, if it's a roofer, for example, and just hand them that and say, please fill this out first. Basically they get checked to make sure that they're licensed and they're reputable, that they're able to do business here in Lakewood. That's a great way to get folks to leave quickly. Just say, fill this out and return it to me. If they're not a reputable business, they're going to turn away. And so I'll be posting that up on Nextdoor and Facebook and a few different other places, and then giving that out to my fellow council mates so they can propagate that information forward. So it's a quick way to get someone away from your door if you've answered it.
Mr. Cox, you may not know this, but are politicians exempt from that? We should change that.
That is so funny.
Ms. Gutwein.
I just want to second what Councilor Harrison said. We had a great presentation from Lynn, and a lot of neighbors want to join the Sustainable Neighborhoods program and are asking already when we're going to be expanding that again. So, of course, I was very excited about that. And just thanks to everybody who came out to our meeting. Thanks.
Councilor Wickman.
Just a reminder that this Saturday is the Ward 4 Town Hall meeting, 9:30 at Green Mountain Presbyterian Church. In addition to hearing your comments about development or anything else that's on your mind, we will also have some speakers from the fire department, and they'll probably talk a little bit about the arson situation up there in the wildland fires of Green Mountain. And they'll also be telling folks how to prepare for this year's wildland fire season. So a couple good reasons to come down on Saturday.
Thank you. Councilor Coop.
All right, thank you for coming back to me. There is a very exciting event for first the O'Kane Park neighborhood and also for the entire city. Coming up on May 16th in the council chambers here, the Historic Preservation Commission is going to be hearing a presentation. That's May 16th, 6:30 p.m. here in the council chambers. the Historical Preservation Commission will be holding a public hearing about the nomination of the O'Kane Farm being the first property in Lakewood to be have a landmark designation on that property. I won't get into what that means, but it means there's a way to get funds to restore that property. So this is going to be the first one to go through this process in Lakewood. Anybody in Lakewood is invited to come to that hearing. If you are interested in any historical preservation whatsoever around the city, please come, be a part of this. This first time. This is the first time this is happening in Lakewood. So that is May 16th, 6:30 p.m. here in the council chambers to listen to the Historic Preservation Commission and the public hearing about designating the O'Kane Farm as to get the landmark designation. That's very exciting.
Great, very cool. Michelle, Mr. Cox, Ms. Nealon?
No report.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming out. Thank you to our police agents for hanging out with us tonight, keeping us safe. Be safe out there, and we will adjourn at 8:52.